Hello, this is Guess Who? And if you guessed Granddaddy Pendragon, you're correct. Welcome to my creepy little channel. And I'm joined today by two of the Annabelle dolls that I have in my collection. I have the Trick or Treat Studios exact replica of Annabelle, and I have the new Spirit Halloween Annabelle ragdoll. I love Annabelle. I think she's a very, very cool doll. Uh, I love the Conjuring movies. They're fun to watch. Conjuring 1 and 2 especially are very scary. I like the Annabelle movies too. Uh, you know, a lot of the movies in the Conjuring universe sort of fluctuate a little bit in the scare factor, but that's okay. In my book, they're all watchable and enjoyable. And I love the Annabelle character. She's become a real icon, hasn't she? I mean, there is Annabelle merchandise out the wazoo. I know in my own collection, I have not only these two dolls, but I also have a lot of other Annabelle dolls, some made by Mezco, some by other companies. I have Annabelle figurines, Annabelle Funkos. I mean, there's just Annabelle stuff all over the place here in my house. And when you consider how many exist in the world over, it's staggering. Now, the thing, though, that I need to point out, and I have pointed out in previous videos that I've done, like on these dolls and other Annabelle dolls, is that this version of Annabelle that most people are familiar with is just simply based on the movie prop that was used in the Conjuring movies. This is not the way Annabelle actually looks like in real life. I think this is a very cool design. I love it, but it's not accurate to the real Annabelle. The real Annabelle, as I've pointed out before and as others have pointed out, is more like this. Now this is too small to be like the actual Annabelle. The real Annabelle was a much larger version of Raggedy Ann, but I carry this around just for illustration. But yeah, this is what Annabelle looks like. The doll that is so dangerous that she has to be kept behind glass with a warning posted, do not open. However, it's time for us to talk about Annabelle. Yes, let's talk about Annabelle, the real Annabelle. Uh, there's been a lot of investigations that have been done by uh, podcasters such as Dust Productions and Stevie from Truth or Demons into the Annabelle story and into the actual history of Ed and Lorraine Warren. And they have tended to debunk a lot of the claims that were made by the Warrens regarding not only Annabelle but other, you know, investigations they did, like, the Amityville Horror and, all of the rest. And a lot of people tend to take those Conjuring movies like they're gospel truth. And they don't realize that they are works of fiction. Now, I realize that they claim to be based on an actual story and on true testimonies. However, as Dust Productions and Truth or Demons and many others on YouTube, you can do a search. You'll find just all kinds of videos debunking the Warrens and their claims. So I'm not going to just recapitulate all of that, but I do want to talk to you about the Annabelle doll as a doll collector, and I also want to talk to you about Annabelle as a fiction writer. I am a novelist, so I'm a professional liar. And I also want to, let you know that a lot of the things that I say about the Annabelle claims are coming from someone that does have formal training in religion and biblical studies. And I don't mean in some, jackleg little school somewhere that was totally unaccredited. My professors in biblical studies were all very, well-known scholars in the biblical field. They received their education from places like Harvard and Princeton and Johns Hopkins and Yale and all of those schools. So I was blessed in receiving what I consider a top grade education in biblical studies. I have studied the original biblical languages of Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic, and some other cognate languages. So this is where I'm coming from, okay, as we talk about the subject of Annabelle. I just want you, to let you know that I'm not just some, uh, nut job that fell off of a turnip truck. I do have a little background in this subject. Not an expert, but I would say when it comes to the spiritual realm and the demonic, no one is an expert. We're all in the dark, quite literally, in many cases. But the Warrens, as you know, claimed that the Annabelle doll, the real one, was just the most haunted doll in the museum, the occult museum that they kept in their house. And that it was so dangerous that it had to be kept under glass, under lock and key. There was that famous warning that was posted on the glass, warning, do not open, for any reason. Do not touch, or however it was phrased. And, so word has gotten around, and especially thanks to the Conjuring movies, that Annabelle is the most dangerous, murderous doll to ever exist. However, as Dust Productions and Stevie have pointed out, a lot of the Warrens' claims are, how shall we say, suspect and contradictory. And there's been a lot of investigations into their backgrounds and what have you. And I think that the most succinct description of the Warrens was done by an author, actually, who did a book on one of their investigations. Ray Garton, I believe his name was. He was asked to describe the Warrens, and he did so in one word. He said, frauds. And that's a guy who spent a lot of personal time with the Warrens, talking to them. And he, according to these sources, he went up to Ed Warren and he said, Ed, I can't remember the exact case he was working on. It was one of their investigations. And he went up to Ed, supposedly, and said, Ed, I'm not getting a very straightforward story from these folk. Their facts are contradictory, and so forth. And Ed said, a lot of the people that come to us are crazy. He said, you're a writer of scary stories, right? Scary books. Well, just take what they tell you and make it scary. Yeah. Well, let me share with you just a few of my own opinions, and these are just my viewpoints. I did not know the Warrens. I'm not a paranormal investigator. Now, I do believe in the spiritual realm. I believe personally in the Trinity. I believe in the devil. I believe in demons and angels. Do I know a lot about them, or have I had a lot of first-hand experiences with them? No. So I'm as ignorant as they come. Yes, I do have a formal education in biblical studies, but that's dealing with what people have said about demons and the like. And you have a lot of anecdotal stuff that goes around. Years ago, I did encounter a woman who told me that she was demon possessed. She came to me for help. And what I told her was, she didn't manifest anything that I thought was very unusual. She was quite lucid. She wasn't like turning her head all the way around or flying around the room or anything or causing chairs to slide across. But I told her, I said, well, what I would recommend that you first do, if you feel that there's something wrong with you, is get a complete and thorough checkup and make sure that there's not some somatic reason that's leading you to believe that you are demon possessed. Do that first, and then consult. If it turns out you're okay physically, but you still feel that you are being subjected to an attack by a demon or demons, then you might want to consult, a priest or a clergyman and go from there. But I did not just say right off the bat, oh, you've got a demon? Okay, great, let's do an exorcism or something. Let's do a ritual. Why? Because that's irresponsible. I've talked through the years to a lot of people that believe that, the devil was tracking them down and they were, under siege by demonic forces. And a lot of times these folk, in my opinion, were mentally ill. They were delusional. And I think it's the height of irresponsibility to just jump to conclusions and say to somebody who may think that they're demonically possessed and say, oh, well, yeah, obviously you are. And I've had some interesting encounters with folk through the years. One was with the wife of a minister. And she told me in private, that she had been ritually abused in a church, that the whole church was actually practicing Satanists who were operating under the guise of being Christians, and that she was, ritually, violated and all of that sort of thing. And, what do you do with a story like that? Now, I didn't try to, I just listened. I mean, that's all I could do, because I had no way of verifying whether it was true or not. It was just something she was telling me. Was this brought on by delusion? Could be. Could it possibly be true? Yeah. I have no doubt. When it comes to human evil, people can get pretty creative in how they exercise wickedness. But there was nowhere to go with it. I prayed with her, as I recall, and that was pretty much all I could do, other than being sympathetic to the obvious pain she was feeling. So, like I say, I'm not a paranormal investigator. I don't go out hunting for demons or spiritual forces like that. Why? Because number one, I'm not good enough. I mean, no one is perfect, but if you're going to take on demons, you better have your act together, is all I can say, because I suspect, based upon anecdotal stuff, I suspect that they are going to outright attack you. That's at least been the reports of people who are exorcists and have claimed to have encountered genuinely demonically possessed folk. So yeah, I wouldn't go out looking for demons at all. And there have been times I have been invited to do that, but that was back when I I was more in the religious biz. I'm not today. Just so you know, I'm not a minister or a priest or anything like that. I'm a dog collector and a fiction writer. That's all I am, and that's all I claim to be. But I do, I do take that seriously. I don't have any personal experience of, seeing actual demonic possession. And the problem is that the symptoms of someone who is possessed by a demon would look a lot like someone that was mentally ill. That's why, like I told the lady I was talking about just a while ago, that she should get a checkup first. Because how do you know someone is possessed? Now, I know the Roman Catholic Church has kind of a litmus test of ways to determine if a person is actually possessed by a demon, like speaking in, previously unstudied languages like Latin or Greek or, I don't know, uh, Sumerian language or something, all of that, or manifesting telekinetic powers or having knowledge of something that they should not naturally be able to have any awareness of. But those tests, I would point out, are extra biblical. In the scriptures, whenever you have in the New Testament Jesus or one of his disciples encountering someone with an unclean spirit, there is no mention whatsoever of them flying around or speaking in some language that the disciples, that caused the disciples to turn to Jesus and say, what's he saying? We don't understand. And then, Jesus answering saying, well, he's speaking in Ugaritic or whatever. You don't have any examples of that at all. Usually the demoniac recognizes Jesus in the accounts, in the gospel accounts. And you do have the case where the person who had the multitude of demons inside him, the one identified as Legion, as possessing evidently, supernatural strength. At least he was able to break the bonds whenever the local villagers would try to tie him up. And he spent his time in the graveyards howling and moaning and cutting himself with stones. You do have that. But that's it, really. I mean, a lot of these paranormal things that people attribute to demonically possessed people, I'm just saying, lies outside the purview of Scripture. So go, do with that as you will, and that's what makes me personally always a little dubious. But going back to Annabelle, don't want to ramble too much here, but Annabelle, like I say, according to the Warrens, is the most haunted doll in their occult museum, which causes me to raise the question, number one, why do they have an occult museum? Now, I can understand why they have a storage area for haunted or demon-possessed items. Okay, I can understand why they would want to quarantine those, kind of like on your computer when your antivirus quarantines malicious sites. Fine, I could understand the logic to that. But to have a museum where you charge people to come and look at the scary stuff, that sets off an alarm with me right off the bat. Because I would think if you have a bunch of objects and items and dolls that have caused people so much misery and so much grief and have tormented them so much, that why would you charge for others to see them? Why would you make that a sideshow? Doesn't seem to me to make a lot of sense or to evidence a lot of integrity, personally speaking. And what makes this even more incredible is the real Annabelle has been taken on tour. Yeah, this doll is so dangerous. You're not even supposed to touch the doll because it's it's a mechanism used by a demon, an honest to goodness demon. You got to keep it under glass. Do not touch it. Don't even look at it sideways. Or horrible things will happen. You'll die. You'll die. And you're taking this doll on tour. Does that cause a flag to be thrown or what? Yeah, uh, I just have to shake my head. And by the way, just so you know, I'm keeping my arms around these two Annabelle dolls, not because I'm just saying, oh, we're family, but but because they keep wanting to slide off my lap. Um, so forgive that. Hopefully, it's not too distracting. But yeah, let's take the haunted doll on tour. This doll that can cause people to die. And there are reports that Lorraine, when she was alive, and presumably Ed, I guess, would take Annabelle out and would take her to a restaurant where people could get their pictures taken with the doll. Yeah, let's let's take the most haunted, murderous doll that exists and let people take selfies with it. Yeah, do you see why I'm skeptical about all that? I tend to think that there was a lot of BS with this Annabelle thing. Now, don't get me wrong, as a fiction writer, I think it's a great story. Like I say, I love The Conjuring. I love the make-believe couple of Ed and Lorraine Warren. I really do. I think that, the actors that portray them just do a super job. And I mean, it's a great story. It really is. It's just, uh, you know, lends itself to just so many possibilities. But do I believe that it is like a documentary, that's what really happened? No, not in the slightest do I believe it. Like I say, I think the Warrens, in my personal opinion, and I agree, like I say, with the author I quoted earlier who did know them, I think that the Warrens are frauds. I think they took people for a ride, that they were interested in money, and that the real Annabelle doll, let me trot out the Raggedy Ann doll once again, is not a doll that's going to suddenly jump out of the cage and go booga 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 booga. No, it's just a doll. Ed Warren himself made the statement, which I totally agree with. He said that demons cannot possess objects, and I agree. There is certainly no case in the Bible of a demon possessing an inanimate object. Now, I'm speaking from a Christian standpoint here. I know there are probably, there are other religions in the world in which that would be possible. I know in Japan there is a belief that, dolls can possess the spirits of folk or the life forces of folk and should be taken seriously. There's even a temple in which people will take their dolls to be watched over by the local priests. I don't share that viewpoint myself personally, but I'm just saying there are a variety of opinions on this subject. I'm just giving you mine, okay? But I do not think that Annabelle, the real Annabelle, is a mechanism being used by a demon. I do believe there are demons, and I take them seriously, but I don't think that a lot of these claims that are made about Annabelle, while they are indeed entertaining and intriguing, I don't think they're authentic at all. I think that the Warrens were the real Warrens, not the movie versions, but the real Warrens weren't necessarily as noble-hearted as they thought. They made a lot of claims that could not be substantiated, did a lot of things that seemed to evidence more of a preoccupation with making money instead of genuinely helping people. I think if you're going to really minister to people who are being besieged by demonic forces, you don't try to make a buck off of it. That's like somebody saving a child's life and then wanting to write a book about it. I would be very suspicious about such a person. There are things you can write books about, and nonfiction books at that, but there are certain things that to do so is just downright tawdry. It evidences a less than noble ambition. And I think that Ed and Lorraine Warren, in my opinion, based upon, my personal studies of their cases that they've performed and their claims and their the various things they've done, I don't think they ring true. It's not even for certain that there's just one Annabelle. There are people claiming that there are actually several Annabelle dolls. Some claim the original one is lost or got sold off, and that the Annabelle you see in the case now is a different doll, which would mean it's not haunted whatsoever. They say it looks too new to have been encased, for so many years, since the 70s. And I think there's, that's a good hypothesis. But yeah, I think the real Annabelle is just about as haunted as these two little cuties. I don't, again, as someone who collects creepy dolls, I don't lose a night's sleep worrying about these dolls coming to life. I don't worry about them being in league with the devil. I think they are what they are, and that is they are dolls. Period. And yeah, they can look creepy. Could someone fall under evil influence if they attribute to the doll certain, demonic characteristics? Could someone like fall down before these dolls and go, "Hail Satan, please possess me"? I guess that's possible. I mean, I don't do that. I don't really like to truck around with the devil. Not me. I'm not a Satanist. I just like creepy dolls because I think that's an aspect of art that's interesting. I think our attempts to portray what is creepy is intriguing, and that's why I like to collect these dolls. But do I believe that the real Annabelle is authentically a haunted doll that is used by a demon? The answer, as you probably have guessed by now, is no, I don't. Thank you very much for watching this video. I know it's a little longer than my usual videos, but I thought it was probably important, since I show a lot of reviews about Annabelle dolls, to kind of let you know just where I stand. Feel free to comment down below on how you regard the real Annabelle. Do you think she is indeed possessed? Do you think that these debunkers are off on the wrong track, that the Warrens are indeed unassailable in their claims? Comment below. I mean, you don't have to agree with me, but I'm just, sharing with you where I come from, again, as a fiction writer and as a doll collector. Well, if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. And hit the like button, all of that good stuff. I would love to have you as a regular viewer of my videos because I look at a lot of very interesting, creepy dolls, living dead dolls, as well as other horror-related dolls. So, thank you again for watching. Take good care of yourself, okay? And we shall see you next time.